The boardroom fell silent when Marcus Whitmore slammed his hand on the mahogany table, and three executives immediately stood to leave without another word. "Sit down," Marcus said, his voice dropping to that dangerous quiet tone that made billion-dollar deals happen. They sat. He was only 34, but he had built Whitmore Manufacturing from a struggling family business into the third-largest steel production company in North America. Nobody questioned him twice. Except, apparently, his new HR director. Sarah Chen had joined the company 6 months ago, hired by the board during Marcus's acquisition trip to Germany. She stood at the far end of the conference table now, her tablet clutched against her charcoal blazer, looking like she wanted to be anywhere else. But she did not sit down. "Mr. Whitmore, we have a significant problem with employee retention in our factory divisions," she said, her voice steady despite the tension crackling through the room. Exit interviews show that 73% of departing workers cite management communication issues and unresolved workplace conflicts. Marcus leaned back in his chair. "Then hire people who don't quit. That's not a sustainable solution. The cost of turnover is eating into our margins. More importantly, we're facing 3 separate lawsuits from employees who claim hostile work environment." He felt his jaw tighten. Marcus ran a fair company. He paid above market rates, offered comprehensive benefits, and maintained the highest safety standards in the industry. Hostile was the last word that should apply to Whitmore Manufacturing. "What do you propose?" he asked. Sarah tapped her tablet. "Management training, specifically conflict resolution and family mediation techniques. Studies show that workplaces function like family systems, with similar dynamics and power structures. Teaching managers these skills reduces conflicts, improves communication, and creates better team cohesion. Family mediation." Marcus let the words hang in the air. "You want my managers to go to therapy. Training, not therapy. It's a 4-week intensive program, Monday and Wednesday evenings, 6 to 9. The company would cover all costs." One of the executives, Tom Patterson from operations, cleared his throat. "Will management be required to attend?" Sarah's eyes flicked to Marcus, then back to Tom. "The program works best when leadership models the behavior they want to see in their teams. So yes, that includes upper management." Marcus understood the implication immediately. She meant him. The idea of sitting in some counselor's office learning how to talk about feelings made his skin crawl. He had built this company through decisive action, not endless discussion. "Send me the details," he said. "We're done here." The executives filed out, leaving Sarah gathering her materials. Marcus watched her, noting the way she took a slow breath before turning to face him. "Thank you for considering this," she said. "I didn't say yes, but you didn't say no." A small smile tugged at her lips. "That's progress." After she left, Marcus stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Detroit River. His reflection stared back at him. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a suit that cost more than most people's monthly rent. He looked like success. He looked like a man who had everything figured out. The truth sat heavy in his chest, a weight he had carried for so long he almost forgot it was there. His father had died 2 years ago, and they had not spoken in the 5 years before that. His younger sister Emma called once a month, duty calls that lasted exactly 10 minutes. His mother had remarried and moved to Arizona, sending Christmas cards with photos of her new family, her new life, her new chance at happiness. Marcus had the company. He had always had the company. His phone buzzed. A text from his assistant. Dr. Morrison's office confirms your physical next Tuesday. Right. The annual checkup he had been postponing for 3 months. Another item to check off an endless list. He looked down at the factory floor visible through the window, watching workers move between machines in coordinated precision. They trusted him to lead. They depended on Whitmore Manufacturing for their livelihoods, their families' futures. If this training program could reduce lawsuits and improve retention, it was a business decision. Nothing more. Marcus pulled up Sarah's email on his phone and scanned the details. The program was run by someone named Julia Reeves, a licensed family therapist and certified mediator who had worked with everyone from Fortune 500 companies to nonprofit organizations. The location was in downtown Detroit, a renovated building that housed several mental health practices and counseling centers. He forwarded the email to his assistant with a brief message. "Sign me up for the next session. Block the time on my calendar." If Marcus Whitmore was going to require his managers to do something, he would do it first. The Northwood Counseling Center occupied the 4th floor of a beautifully restored Art Deco building that had once been a bank. Marcus arrived 15 minutes early on Monday evening, a habit ingrained from years of setting the pace in business meetings. The waiting room surprised him with its warmth. Comfortable chairs in deep blue fabric, wooden side tables holding real plants instead of plastic, and soft lighting that did not feel clinical. A woman in her early 30s sat behind the reception desk, her dark hair pulled into a low ponytail. She looked up when he entered and smiled. "You must be Marcus Whitmore. I'm Julia Reeves." "Welcome." He had not expected the instructor to handle reception duties. He also had not expected someone so young, though he immediately recognized the assumption for what it was. Julia stood and extended her hand. Her handshake was firm, professional. "We'll start in about 10 minutes once everyone arrives," she said. "Can I get you water or coffee?" "I'm fine, thank you." "Great. Make yourself comfortable." There are only 6 participants in this session, so it'll be intimate enough for real work but large enough for good group dynamics. Marcus chose a chair near the window, pulling out his phone to clear emails while he waited. Other participants trickled in. A middle-aged woman in nursing scrubs, 2 men who looked like they might be business partners based on their comfortable banter, a younger woman with purple streaks in her hair wearing a restaurant uniform, and an older man in khakis and a polo shirt. At precisely 6 o'clock, Julia ushered them into a conference room that had been arranged with chairs in a circle. No table, no barriers. Marcus felt immediately exposed, but he took a seat and waited. "Thank you all for being here," Julia began, settling into her own chair. "This training program focuses on family mediation techniques and conflict resolution, but the skills you'll learn apply to virtually every relationship in your life. Work, family, friendships, romantic partnerships. Over the next 4 weeks, we'll explore communication patterns, emotional regulation, active listening, and how to navigate difficult conversations with compassion and clarity." She had a calm presence, Marcus noticed, the kind of person who could hold space without dominating it. Her voice carried authority without being harsh. "Let's start with introductions. Share your name, what brings you here, and one thing you hope to gain from this training. Who wants to go first?" The woman in scrubs raised her hand. "I'm Patricia. I'm a nursing supervisor, and my hospital is requiring management to complete this training. I hope to learn how to handle conflicts between staff members better, because right now I just want to hide in the supply closet when people start arguing." Gentle laughter rippled through the group. The ice had broken. The business partners were Alex and David, co-owners of a craft brewery who had almost dissolved their partnership over disagreements about expansion. The young woman, Simone, worked as a restaurant manager and was tired of watching her team fall apart over drama. The older man, Robert, had recently retired and was taking the training to help mediate disputes in his neighborhood association. Then it was Marcus's turn. 6 pairs of eyes turned to him. Marcus Whitmore, I run a manufacturing company. I'm here because employee retention data suggests we have communication problems in management, and I need to understand what that means and how to fix it. Julia's eyes held his for a moment, and he had the unsettling feeling that she saw right through his carefully constructed answer to something deeper underneath. What do you hope to gain? She prompted gently. The honest answer surprised him as it formed in his mind. I want to understand why people leave. People leave your company or people leave you. The question landed like a physical blow. Marcus felt his spine stiffen, his defenses rising automatically. But Julia's expression held no judgment, only genuine curiosity. Both, I suppose, he said finally. She nodded. That's a brave admission. Thank you for sharing that with us. The training session moved into a discussion of conflict styles. Julia distributed assessments for each participant to complete, then guided them through interpreting their results. Marcus scored high in competing and accommodating, low in collaborating and compromising. Competing isn't inherently bad, Julia explained when she noticed him frowning at his scores. In business, decisiveness is valuable, but in relationships, always needing to win creates distance. People stop bringing their real concerns to you because they know you'll just override them. What if my decision is objectively better? Marcus asked. Better for what outcome, winning the argument or maintaining the relationship? Both should be possible. They can be, Julia said. But it requires a fundamental shift in how you approach conflict. Instead of you versus them, it becomes both of you versus the problem. That's collaboration. The concept felt foreign to Marcus. In his world, there were winners and losers, strong decisions and weak ones, people who delivered results and people who made excuses. But he had signed up for this training, so he kept listening. Julia walked them through a role-play exercise where participants paired up to practice active listening. Marcus was partnered with Robert, the retired man. They were given a scenario, 2 neighbors disagreeing about a property line fence. I'll be neighbor A, Robert said. You're neighbor B. Ready. For 20 minutes, they went back and forth, with Julia occasionally pausing them to point out communication patterns. Marcus caught himself interrupting 3 times before he finally managed to let Robert finish a complete thought without jumping in with solutions. Notice what happens in your body when you're forced to just listen, Julia said during a pause. Marcus, what are you feeling right now? Frustrated, he admitted. I can see the obvious solution. The fence should go exactly on the property line based on the survey. Just split the cost and be done with it. But Robert hasn't told you yet what his actual concern is. You're solving the problem you think exists, not the one he's experiencing. She gestured for Robert to continue. The older man explained that his real worry was not the fence location, but the oak tree that had stood on the property line for 40 years. His late wife had planted it. He was afraid any fence construction would damage the roots. Marcus sat back, feeling something shift in his understanding. I didn't know about the tree. Because you didn't ask, Julia said simply. You went straight to solving. Most people do. But here's the thing. People don't just want solutions. They want to be heard first. They want to know that their feelings and concerns matter. The rest of the session flew by. When 9 o'clock arrived, Marcus was surprised to find he did not want to leave. His mind was churning with new information, new perspectives. Julia handed out worksheets for them to complete before Wednesday's session. Self-reflection exercises about their conflict history and communication patterns. "Marcus, can I speak with you for a moment?" Julia asked as the others gathered their belongings. He waited while the room emptied, then turned to her. "Yes. I want to acknowledge that you showed up tonight and you participated fully even when things got uncomfortable. That takes courage." "It's just a training," he said. "Is it?" She tilted her head slightly. "You could have sent your managers and called it good, but you're here. That tells me you're serious about change." Marcus felt something warm spread through his chest, an unfamiliar sensation that took him a moment to identify. Someone was seeing him. Really seeing him, not just the CEO or the billionaire or the guy who signed the checks. "I don't know if I'm any good at this," he heard himself say. Julia smiled. "Nobody is good at it at first. That's why it's called practice. See you Wednesday." Marcus drove home to his penthouse apartment overlooking the river, the city lights glittering in the darkness. He poured himself 2 fingers of scotch and stood at the window, thinking about the evening. His phone buzzed with work emails, but for once, he ignored them. Instead, he pulled out the worksheet Julia had given him. The first question read, "Describe a significant relationship that ended. What role did communication play in that ending?" His father's face rose in his mind immediately. David Whitmore, SR. A man who had built Whitmore Manufacturing from nothing and nearly run it into the ground through stubborn refusal to modernize. Marcus had watched the company hemorrhaging money for years before finally staging what amounted to a boardroom coup, forcing his father out and taking control. They had not spoken after that. His father had died of a heart attack 5 years later, and Marcus had given the eulogy at the funeral, saying all the right things about legacy and vision and family. All lies, really. Or maybe not lies, but incomplete truths. He had never told his father that he was sorry for the way it happened, even if not sorry for the outcome. Sorry that they could not find a way to be both business rivals and father and son. Sorry that neither of them had the language to say what they really felt. Marcus set down his scotch glass and picked up a pen. He began to write. Wednesday's session focused on emotional regulation and the concept of the window of tolerance. Julia drew a diagram on a whiteboard showing a zone of optimal functioning, flanked by hyperarousal above and hypoarousal below. When we're in our window of tolerance, we can think clearly, communicate effectively, and manage our emotions, she explained. But stress, conflict, and triggers can push us outside that window. Hyperarousal looks like anger, anxiety, hypervigilance. Hypoarousal looks like shutdown, numbness, depression. She pointed to the hyperarousal zone. "Marcus, based on what you've shared, which zone do you think you typically go to under stress?" he considered. "I don't get anxious, I get focused." "What does focus look like?" "Decisive, clear. I know what needs to happen and I make it happen." Patricia, the nurse supervisor, spoke up. "That sounds like hyperarousal to me. My ex-husband was like that. He'd get really calm and cold and just start issuing orders when things got tense." Marcus felt defensive, then caught himself. That was the feeling Julia had warned them about, the automatic resistance to being challenged. He took a breath. "Maybe," he said. "I never thought of it that way." Julia smiled. "The tricky thing about hyperarousal is that it can feel productive. You're doing something, taking action. but you're not actually processing the emotions driving that action. You're bypassing them. She introduced a technique called the stop method. Stop, take a breath, observe what you're feeling, proceed mindfully. It sounded simple to the point of being simplistic, but when they practiced it through role-play scenarios, Marcus discovered how difficult it was to actually pause when every instinct screamed at him to act. They worked through a mediation scenario involving a divorcing couple arguing about custody schedules. Julia played the mediator, and participants took turns being the couple. When Marcus played the father, he found himself getting genuinely angry on behalf of the fictional character, frustrated by the mother's seeming inflexibility. Julia called a timeout. "Marcus, where are you right now, in your window or outside it?" "I'm fine." "Check in with your body, heart rate, muscle tension, breath." He realized his jaw was clenched tight, his shoulders up near his ears. "Okay, maybe outside it." "Let's try stop right now. Stop what you're doing, take a breath." He inhaled slowly, exhaled. "Now observe, what are you feeling?" "Frustrated, like I'm not being heard." "There it is," Julia said gently. "Now we're getting to something real, proceed mindfully." "What do you actually need right now?" Marcus looked at Simone, who was playing the mother. "I need to understand why you won't consider alternating weeks. Help me understand your concern." Simone softened. "I'm worried about disrupting our daughter's routine. She's already struggling with the divorce." Just like that, the conflict shifted. They were no longer adversaries, but parents trying to solve a problem together. Marcus felt the tension drain from his shoulders. "That's collaboration," Julia said. "Notice how different that feels from competing." After the session, Julia caught up with Marcus in the hallway as he waited for the elevator. "You did great work tonight. I know that wasn't easy." "I almost walked out 3 times," he admitted, "but you stayed. That's what matters." She hesitated, then said, "Can I ask you something personal? You mentioned at the first session that you want to understand why people leave. Is there someone specific you're thinking about?" The elevator doors opened, but Marcus did not step inside. He let them close again. "My father, my sister, my mother in a way, though she had good reasons." The words came easier than he expected. "I've spent the last 2 years telling myself it's just how business goes, how life goes. People move on. But being here, doing this work, I'm starting to wonder if I push them away." Julia's expression held compassion without pity. "That's a painful question to sit with. For what it's worth, I think you're brave for asking it. Or foolish. Sometimes those are the same thing." She smiled. "See you Monday." Marcus stepped into the next elevator feeling lighter somehow, despite the weight of what he had just admitted. When he got home, he did something he had not done in years. He called his sister. Emma answered on the 4th ring, her voice cautious. "Marcus, is everything okay?" "Everything's fine." "I just wanted to talk." A long pause. "About what?" "About us. About how we barely speak anymore. About whether you'd be open to having dinner sometime soon." Another pause, even longer. He could hear a television in the background, the sounds of her life that he knew nothing about. "I'd like that," Emma said finally, and Marcus heard the same tentative hope he felt echoing in her voice. They made plans for Saturday. After hanging up, Marcus stood in his kitchen, his phone still in his hand, and realized he was smiling. Saturday evening brought Marcus to a small Italian restaurant in Ann Arbor, where Emma lived with her husband and 2 daughters. She had suggested somewhere halfway between their cities, neutral ground. Marcus arrived first and chose a table near the back, somewhere they could talk without being overheard. Emma walked in at exactly 7 and Marcus stood to greet her. She looked so much like their mother had at that age: dark hair, sharp cheekbones, eyes that missed nothing. She was 31 now, a professor of environmental science at the university. He knew this from her infrequent emails, not from actual conversation. They hugged awkwardly, then sat. "You look good," Emma said. "Tired but good. You look happy." "I am." She studied him across the table. "This is weird, right? Us having dinner like normal siblings." "Very weird," Marcus agreed. The waiter appeared and they ordered wine and appetizers, small talk that filled the silence while they figured out how to actually talk to each other. After the wine arrived, Emma said, "So what's going on? You don't just call out of nowhere after 2 years of basically nothing." Marcus took a sip of wine, gathering his thoughts. The old version of himself would have deflected, kept things surface level. But Julia's voice echoed in his mind. "People want to be heard first. I'm taking a training course. Family mediation and conflict resolution. It's making me realize how badly I've handled relationships, including ours." Emma's eyebrows rose. "You're in therapy." "Training," he corrected, then caught himself. "Though I guess the line is blurry, the instructor keeps asking questions that feel a lot like therapy." "Good for you." Emma sounded genuine. "I mean that. I've been in therapy for 3 years. It's hard work." "Why are you in therapy?" She laughed, but it was not a happy sound. "Are you seriously asking me that?" "Marcus, our family is a disaster. Dad died without speaking to you. Mom couldn't wait to escape to Arizona. I spent most of my 20s trying to prove I was nothing like either of you, which is its own kind of damage." The word stung, but Marcus made himself sit with the discomfort instead of defending. "I didn't know you felt that way. Because we never talk about real things. We send birthday cards and Christmas presents and pretend everything is fine." Emma leaned forward. "I want to be happy that you called, but I'm also scared that this is temporary. That you'll decide this feeling stuff is too messy and go back to being the Ice King CEO who doesn't need anyone." "Is that how you see me?" "It's how everyone sees you. It's the persona you've cultivated." She softened slightly. "But I remember the brother who used to build blanket forts with me, who taught me how to ride a bike. That person is still in there somewhere, right?" Marcus felt his throat tighten. "I don't know. Maybe. I've spent so long being the person Dad needed me to be, and then the person the company needed me to be. I'm not sure I know who I actually am." "Then maybe this training is exactly what you need." They talked through dinner, really talked, in a way they had not done since before their father got sick. Emma told him about her research on wetland restoration, about her daughter's very different personalities, about her husband Tom who worked as a physical therapist. Marcus told her about the company, but also about the loneliness of success, about coming home to an empty apartment every night and wondering if this was all there was. "Are you dating anyone?" Emma asked over dessert. "I don't have time." "That's not true. You don't make time. There's a difference." Marcus thought about Julia, about the way she listened with her whole attention, the way her questions opened up spaces inside him he had not known were closed. Then he pushed the thought away. She was his instructor, nothing more. "Maybe I don't know how," he said instead. Emma reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "Then learn. You're learning how to communicate better, right? Learn how to let someone in. You deserve that, Marcus. Despite everything, you deserve to be happy." He drove home that night with Emma's words circling in his mind. His apartment felt especially empty when he walked in, the silence pressing against his ears. He thought about calling someone, then realized he did not know who he would call. He had business associates, not friends. He had employees, not confidants. Marcus pulled out his laptop and opened his email, intending to work. Instead, he found himself typing Julia's name into the search bar, pulling up the Northwood Counseling Center website. Her bio page showed a professional headshot and a brief description of her background. Master's degree in marriage and family therapy, certification in family mediation, 10 years of clinical experience. Originally from Chicago, moved to Detroit 5 years ago. Nothing personal. Nothing to explain why he found himself thinking about her at odd moments, replaying their conversations. Monday's training session introduced the concept of attachment styles. Julia handed out another assessment, and participants completed it in silence before discussing their results. "I'm primarily secure with some anxious tendencies," Patricia shared, "which makes sense. I worry about people leaving, but I can usually talk myself down from the panic." Alex and David both scored as avoidant. "Well, that explains why we're terrible at talking about problems," David said with a laugh. "We just ignore everything until it explodes." When it was Marcus's turn, he stared at his results. Dismissive avoidant, the assessment read. People with this attachment style tend to be self-reliant to a fault, uncomfortable with emotional intimacy, and likely to withdraw when relationships become too demanding. "That sounds about right," he said aloud. Julia nodded. "Can you tell us what resonates about that description?" "All of it. I've always been better alone. Relationships feel like obligations, like people wanting things from me that I don't know how to give." "What do you think they want?" Marcus considered. "Emotional availability, vulnerability. All the things that feel like weaknesses in my world." "What if they're not weaknesses?" Julia asked. "What if they're just different kinds of strength?" The question sat with him through the rest of the session, as they discussed how attachment styles form in childhood and play out in adult relationships. Julia explained that dismissive avoidant attachment often develops when children learn that their emotional needs will not be met, so they stop expressing those needs altogether. Marcus thought about his childhood. His father always working, his mother overwhelmed and resentful, the unspoken message that being needy was being weak. He had learned early to handle things himself, to not ask for help, to measure his worth in achievements rather than affection. During the break, Marcus stepped outside for air. The late September evening was cool, the sky deepening into dusk. He was surprised when Julia joined him, 2 cups of coffee in her hands. "Thought you might need this," she said, offering him one. "Thank you." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching cars pass on the street below. "How are you doing with all this?" Julia asked. "I know these sessions can be intense, especially for people who aren't used to examining their patterns." "It's harder than I expected," Marcus admitted. "I keep seeing myself in ways I don't particularly like. That's the work. Nobody enjoys confronting their shadow side, but you can't change what you won't acknowledge." "Do you think people can actually change? Attachment styles, communication patterns, all of it?" Julia turned to face him, and in the fading light her expression was earnest. "I wouldn't do this work if I didn't believe people could change. It's not easy and it doesn't happen overnight. But yes, absolutely. Neural pathways can be rewired. New habits can replace old ones. You're already changing just by being here, by asking these questions." "I had dinner with my sister this weekend. First real conversation we've had in years." Julia's face lit up. "Marcus, that's wonderful. How did it feel?" "Terrifying, but also good, like finding something I didn't know I'd lost." He paused. "I told her about this training, about you." "What did you tell her?" That you ask questions that make me uncomfortable in the best way." The words came out before he could stop them, and Marcus felt heat rise to his face. "Professionally speaking." Julia's smile was gentle. "I'm glad it's helpful. That's all I want, for people to find their way to healthier relationships." Something in her tone made Marcus ask, "What about you? Do you have healthy relationships?" She laughed. "Mostly. I'm divorced, so clearly I'm not perfect at this either, but I practice what I teach. I work on my patterns, I stay in therapy, I try to show up authentically in my relationships even when it's hard." "How long ago was the divorce?" 3 years. "We married too young, wanted different things, grew apart in ways we couldn't bridge. It was sad but ultimately right for both of us." Marcus wanted to ask more, wanted to know everything about her, but the timer on her phone chimed. "Break over." As they headed back inside, Julia touched his arm briefly. "Keep doing what you're doing. The fact that you had dinner with your sister tells me you're putting the work into practice. That's how real change happens." The rest of the session flew by as they role-played difficult conversations, practicing the skills they had learned. Marcus paired with Simone this time, working through a scenario about an employee asking for time off during a busy period. He caught himself starting to say no automatically, then stopped and actually listened to her reasoning. "My mom is having surgery," Simone explained, staying in character. "I'm her only family nearby. I know it's bad timing, but I need to be there for her." The old Marcus would have pointed to company policy, suggested she use sick days, found a reason why the answer had to be no. Instead, he heard himself say, "That sounds really stressful. Let's talk about how we can make this work. What dates do you need, and can we bring in temporary coverage?" Simone's face registered surprise, then relief. "Thank you for understanding." After the session ended, Marcus lingered as the others left. Julia was gathering her materials, humming softly to herself. "Can I ask you something?" he said. She looked up. "Of course." "Do you ever work with people one-on-one, outside of these trainings?" "I do have a private practice. Are you interested in individual therapy?" Marcus nodded. "I think I need more than what we can cover in group sessions. There's a lot to unpack. I'd be happy to work with you. Though I should mention that if you become a private client, I'll need to maintain some professional boundaries. We couldn't be friends or socialize outside of sessions." Something in Marcus's chest tightened at those words, a disappointment he had no right to feel. "Of course, I understand. Let me give you my card. Call the office tomorrow and we'll get you scheduled." Marcus took the card, their fingers brushing briefly. He told himself the spark he felt was imagined, meaningless. Julia was his therapist, or about to be. Nothing more. But driving home that night, he could not stop thinking about the way she listened, the way she saw through his defenses without judgment, the way her presence made him want to be better. He was in dangerous territory and he knew it. His phone rang, interrupting his thoughts. "Emma." "Hey," he answered. "Everything okay? I just wanted to say thank you for Saturday. Tom and I were talking about it, and we'd love to have you over for dinner next weekend. Let the girls meet their uncle properly." Marcus felt warmth spread through his chest. "I'd really like that." "Good, and Marcus, I'm proud of you. I know this isn't easy." After they hung up, Marcus sat in his car in the parking garage beneath his building, the engine ticking as it cooled. He was changing. He could feel it happening, the careful walls he had built starting to develop cracks. It was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. His first individual session with Julia was scheduled for the following Thursday at noon. Marcus blocked out 2 hours on his calendar, telling his assistant it was a doctor's appointment, which was not technically a lie. The Northwood Counseling Center looked different during the day, sunlight streaming through the tall windows. Julia met him in the waiting room and led him to a different office than the group training room. This space was smaller, more intimate, with 2 comfortable chairs angled toward each other and a small table between them holding a box of tissues and a white noise machine. "Make yourself comfortable," Julia said, settling into one chair. Marcus took the other. "So how does this work?" he asked. "However you want it to work, this is your time. We can talk about whatever feels most pressing for you right now, or we can dig into patterns and history, or we can focus on specific relationships you want to improve. What feels right?" Marcus leaned back, considering. "I want to talk about my father." "Okay, tell me about him." The story poured out over the next hour. David Whitmore, S.R.'s fierce pride in the company he had built, his refusal to adapt to changing markets, the slow-motion disaster of watching everything nearly collapse. Marcus's desperate attempts to convince his father to modernize, the fights that escalated into screaming matches, the final boardroom showdown that ended with David S.R. being voted out by his own board. "I saved the company," Marcus said, "but I destroyed our relationship, and now he's dead and I can't fix it." Julia's expression was compassionate. "You're carrying a lot of guilt." "Shouldn't I? I chose the business over my father." "Did you, though? Or did you choose the livelihoods of hundreds of employees over one man's pride?" Marcus had not thought of it that way. It felt like a betrayal. "I'm sure it did. But let me ask you this. If your father had bankrupted the company, how would you feel now?" "Angry. Frustrated that he couldn't see reason." "So either way, you lose. Either the company fails and you resent your father, or you save the company and feel guilty." There was no clean answer. "But I could have handled it differently, been less brutal about it." Julia tilted her head. "Maybe. Or maybe your father's pride would have been wounded no matter how gently you tried to remove him from control. You can't know. What you can do is grieve the relationship you wanted but didn't have, and forgive yourself for being human and imperfect." Tears pricked Marcus's eyes, unexpected and unwelcome. He blinked them back, but Julia noticed. "It's okay to cry," she said gently. "I don't cry." "Why not?" "Because crying doesn't solve anything." Julia leaned forward slightly. "Crying isn't about solving. It's about releasing. You're carrying years of grief and guilt and pain, Marcus. Where do you think all that goes if you never let it out?" The dam broke. Marcus felt tears spill down his cheeks, and he could not stop them. He covered his face with his hands, shoulders shaking with sobs he had held back since his father's funeral, maybe longer. Julia said nothing, just let him cry, and somehow her silent presence made it safe enough to fall apart. When the storm finally passed, Marcus lowered his hands to find Julia holding out the tissue box. He took several, wiping his face, embarrassed by the loss of control. "I'm sorry," he said. "Don't apologize, that took courage. It felt like weakness. It felt like being human. There's a difference." They spent the rest of the session talking about emotional expression and the ways Marcus had learned to suppress his feelings. Julia gave him homework. Write a letter to his father saying everything he wished he had said while the man was alive. He did not have to send it anywhere, just needed to get the words out. As Marcus left the office, he felt wrung out but somehow lighter, like he had set down a weight he had been carrying so long he forgot it was there. Over the next 2 weeks, Marcus attended both the group training sessions and individual therapy with Julia. The group work continued to challenge him, pushing him to practice new communication skills in safe scenarios. The individual sessions went deeper, excavating the roots of his patterns. He wrote the letter to his father, 10 pages of anger and grief and love and regret. He read it aloud in Julia's office and cried again, easier this time. Julia helped him see that he could hold multiple truths simultaneously, that he had made the right business decision and that he grieved the relationship cost, that his father had been difficult and that Marcus loved him anyway. In the group training, they moved into advanced mediation techniques. Julia set up a complex scenario involving 3 siblings fighting over their deceased mother's estate. Marcus played the mediator role, and for the first time, he felt the pieces clicking into place. He could hold space for conflicting emotions, could help people articulate their real needs beneath their stated positions. "You're a natural at this," Patricia said after the exercise. "You should consider doing it professionally," Marcus laughed. "I have a company to run." But the comment stayed with him. There was something deeply satisfying about helping people find resolution, about creating space for healing. He found himself thinking about how he could apply these skills more intentionally at Whitmore Manufacturing. He started having regular lunches with department heads, not to discuss metrics, but to actually listen to their concerns and ideas. He implemented an open-door policy 1 afternoon a week. He noticed the way people seemed surprised when he asked how they were doing, and then actually waited for an answer. Emma had him over for dinner and Marcus met his nieces properly for the first time. Lily was 8, all energy and endless questions. Sophie was 5, shy but sweet. They showed him their room, their toys, their favorite books. Marcus sat on the floor of their playroom, helping build an elaborate castle out of blocks, and felt something unlock in his heart. "You're good with them," Emma said later after the girls were in bed. They sat on her back porch, drinking wine under the stars. "I wish I'd done this sooner. I've missed so much of their lives." "You're here now. That's what matters." Marcus told her about the training, about Julia, about the work he was doing. Emma listened with the kind of attention he was learning to recognize as real presence. "This Julia sounds amazing," Emma said. "Are you sure you're not a little bit in love with her?" Marcus felt his face heat. "She's my therapist." "That's not an answer. It would be completely inappropriate." "Still not an answer." Emma grinned. You're falling for your therapist." "This is amazing." "It's not amazing. It's problematic. She's helping me work through major life issues. I can't confuse gratitude and emotional intimacy with romantic feelings." "Can't you? Or is that just what you're telling yourself because you're scared?" Marcus did not have a good answer for that. He changed the subject, but Emma's words haunted him on the drive home. The truth was that he looked forward to his sessions with Julia more than anything else in his week. He found himself wanting to share things with her, wanting her opinion, wanting to make her smile. When she praised his progress, he felt 10 feet tall. When she challenged him, he worked twice as hard to rise to the occasion. But she was his therapist. There were ethical boundaries, professional guidelines. Even if he was developing feelings, nothing could come of them. The final group training session arrived in late October. Julia brought champagne and sparkling cider, a small celebration of their 4 weeks together. "I want each of you to share one thing you've learned and one commitment you're making going forward," she said, as they settled into the circle for the last time. Patricia went first, talking about setting better boundaries at work. Alex and David had created a formal conflict resolution process for their business partnership. Simone was planning to go back to school for counseling. Robert had successfully mediated 3 neighborhood disputes using their new skills. Then it was Marcus's turn. 6 faces turned toward him, these people who had become genuine friends over the past month. "I learned that strength isn't the absence of emotion," Marcus said slowly. "It's the courage to feel everything and keep showing up anyway, and my commitment is to keep practicing that, even when it's uncomfortable. Especially then." Julia's smile was radiant. "I'm so proud of all of you. This was a wonderful group, and I've learned as much from you as I hope you've learned from the material." After the session ended and the others left, Marcus helped Julia clean up the paper cups and napkins. "So this is it for group," he said. "But I'd like to continue individual therapy if you're willing. Of course, let's talk about frequency and goals at your next session." Marcus gathered his courage. "Can I ask you something that might be overstepping?" Julia looked up from the trash bag she was tying. "You can ask me anything. When I'm no longer your client, would you be open to getting coffee sometime? As friends?" He watched her expression carefully, saw surprise flicker across her features followed by something else he could not quite read. "Marcus, I need to be honest with you. I think you're doing incredible work, and I'm honored to be part of your journey. But I have to maintain professional boundaries, which means we can't be friends while we're in a therapeutic relationship. I understand that. I'm asking about after, if there's an after." Julia set down the trash bag. "Therapy doesn't really have a clean end date, especially the kind of deep work you're doing. And even after termination, there's usually a period where the therapeutic relationship should remain boundaried. So you're saying never." "I'm saying not now, and not anytime soon." "I'm sorry if that's disappointing." Marcus nodded, trying to hide his hurt. "No, I appreciate your honesty. I'll see you next Thursday." He left before she could see how much her answer affected him. On the drive home, he felt foolish for even asking. Of course she had said no. He was her client, someone she helped for a living. Any connection he felt was probably just transference, a known phenomenon where clients developed feelings for their therapists. But it felt real. The way his heart raced when he saw her felt real. The way he wanted to know everything about her life, her thoughts, her dreams, felt real. Marcus arrived home to his empty apartment and poured himself a scotch he did not drink. He stood at the window looking out at the city lights and wondered if this was progress or just a new kind of pain. His phone buzzed. A text from Emma. "The girls want to know when Uncle Marcus is coming back. They miss you." He smiled despite his mood and texted back, "Soon, I miss them too." At least he had family again. At least he was building connections, learning how to be in relationships without running away. Julia had given him that, even if she could not give him anything more. The next morning, Marcus arrived at his office to find Sarah Chen waiting outside his door. "We need to talk about the training program," she said without preamble. Marcus unlocked his office and gestured for her to enter. "What about it?" "The results have been remarkable. Employee satisfaction scores are up 15% in departments where managers completed the training. Conflicts are being resolved faster and with better outcomes. We have a waiting list of managers wanting to take the next session." "That's excellent news." Sarah studied him. "You're different too. People have noticed. You're more approachable, more willing to listen. Whatever happened in that training, it worked." Marcus thought about Julia, about the hours of difficult conversations and uncomfortable realizations. "I had a good teacher. I'd like to propose making this training mandatory for all management levels and offering it as a voluntary option for any employee who wants it. The ROI is clear. Do it." And Sarah, Thank you for pushing this. I almost said no, she smiled. I know, but I could see you needed it even if you didn't. After Sarah left, Marcus sat at his desk thinking about the ripple effects of healing. By doing his own work, he was creating space for others to do theirs. The company culture was shifting, becoming more human. His individual session with Julia that Thursday felt different. Marcus could not shake the awareness of his feelings, could not stop wondering if she felt anything in return. But she was professional as always, guiding him through a discussion about intimacy and vulnerability. You've been doing great work rebuilding relationships with your family, Julia said. What about romantic relationships? Is that something you want to explore? The question felt loaded. Eventually, maybe. I don't know if I'm ready. What would ready look like? Marcus considered. Someone who sees me as I actually am, not just the CEO or the money. Someone who challenges me to be better. Someone I can talk to about real things. Those are good criteria. What are you afraid of? Getting it wrong, hurting someone, being hurt? Julia nodded. All valid fears, but the alternative is staying closed off forever. Is that what you want? No. But I also don't want to repeat my parents' mistakes or my own patterns. Then don't. You have awareness now, tools. You can make different choices. She paused. Can I ask what prompted this conversation? Are you interested in someone specific? Marcus met her eyes, and for a moment, he considered telling her the truth. But what would that accomplish except making things awkward? Just thinking about the future, he said instead. Something flickered in Julia's expression, disappointment maybe, but she did not push. They moved on to other topics, and Marcus left the session feeling unsettled. November arrived with cold rain and early darkness. Marcus threw himself into work, into family dinners with Emma, into the slow process of change. He dated a woman his age who worked in finance, introduced by a colleague. She was smart and attractive, and Marcus felt absolutely nothing beyond pleasant conversation. You're not over someone, she said kindly on their third date. I can tell. I'm sorry. You're wonderful, but you're right. Whoever she is, I hope she knows how lucky she is to have you thinking about her like that. After she left, Marcus sat alone at the restaurant table, nursing his wine and facing the truth he had been avoiding. He was in love with Julia. It was not transference or gratitude or confusion. He was genuinely, completely in love with a woman he could not have. The ethical boundaries made sense. He understood why they existed, but understanding did not make the feelings go away. At his next session, Julia noticed his low mood immediately. What's going on? She asked. I went on a few dates. They didn't work out. Why not? Marcus laughed without humor. Because I'm apparently unavailable, emotionally invested elsewhere. Do you want to talk about that? Not particularly. Julia was quiet for a moment. Marcus, I think we need to address something directly. I've noticed a shift in our dynamic, and I want to make sure we're on the same page about boundaries. His heart sank. I've been inappropriate. No, not inappropriate. But I sense there might be some complicated feelings emerging, and that's normal in therapy. It's called transference, and it's something we should process together. What if it's not transference? The words escaped before Marcus could stop them. What if I just really like you as a person beyond all this? Julia's expression was gentle but firm. Even if that's true, my role is to help you, not to be a romantic interest. Those lines can't blur, Marcus. I hope you can understand that. I do understand. Intellectually, I completely get it. But my feelings don't care about professional ethics. Then we need to decide together how to proceed. We could continue working together with these feelings acknowledged but boundaried. We could take a break from therapy, or I could refer you to another therapist. The thought of not seeing Julia anymore made Marcus's chest ache. I don't want to stop working with you. This is helping too much. Okay. Then we acknowledge this complication and we keep doing the work. But Marcus, you need to hear me clearly. Nothing romantic can happen between us. Not now, probably not ever. Can you accept that? He wanted to say no. He wanted to fight for something, to argue that what he felt deserved a chance. But Julia was right. She was his therapist, and that had to take priority. I'll try, he said. That's all I ask. They continued their sessions, dancing around the elephant in the room. Marcus focused on other areas of his life, improving his leadership style, deepening his relationships with Emma and her family, exploring his patterns around work and self-worth. December brought the holidays and a new complication. Sarah Chen invited Marcus to the company holiday party, a tradition he usually skipped. But he was trying to be more present, more engaged, so he agreed to attend. The party was held at a downtown hotel, elegant and festive. Marcus arrived late, scanning the crowd of employees and their partners. He made small talk, accepted congratulations on the company's strong year, and tried to look like he was enjoying himself. Then he saw her across the room. Julia was talking to Sarah Chen, laughing at something Sarah said. She wore a deep green dress that brought out her eyes, her hair down around her shoulders instead of pulled back. Marcus froze. What was Julia doing at his company party? He made his way over, his heart pounding. Julia looked up as he approached, and her smile faltered. Marcus, hi, Sarah beamed. Marcus, have you met my wife, Julia? She's the reason I pushed so hard for that mediation training. Well, she didn't know she was the reason, but her work inspired the whole idea. The pieces clicked into place. Julia Reeves. Sarah Chen Reeves. They shared a last name. Julia's face had gone pale. Sarah, Marcus and I need to talk privately for a moment. Excuse us. She led him to a quiet corner away from the crowd. I didn't know, Julia said immediately. Sarah and I keep our professional lives completely separate. She never mentioned your name, just referred to you as her CEO. And you never mentioned what company you ran. I had no idea until right now. Marcus's mind raced. This is a conflict of interest. A massive one. I can't be your therapist if you're my wife's boss. Julia ran a hand through her hair, distressed. I'm so sorry, Marcus. We have to terminate our therapeutic relationship immediately. Wait. Just like that? I don't have a choice. The ethical violation is too significant. I'll refer you to several excellent therapists who can continue your work. Marcus felt panic rising. I don't want another therapist, I want you. I know, but that's not possible. It never was, and now it's even more complicated. People were starting to notice them talking intensely in the corner. Julia glanced around, then back at Marcus. This isn't the place for this conversation. Can you come to my office tomorrow? We'll do a proper termination session and I'll give you those referrals. Marcus nodded numbly. Julia touched his arm briefly, a gesture of comfort, then walked away to rejoin her wife. He watched her go, feeling like the ground had shifted beneath his feet. He left the party early, driving aimlessly through the city streets. His feelings for Julia had been impossible before. Now they were unthinkable. She was married to his HR director. The complications were endless, but terminating therapy meant Julia was no longer his therapist, which meant the ethical boundaries that prevented anything between them no longer applied. Except for the small fact that she was married. Marcus laughed bitterly at himself. Of course, Julia was married. Of course, the woman he had fallen for was unavailable in the most absolute way possible. It was almost poetic. He went home and did not sleep, staring at the ceiling and replaying every conversation, every moment with Julia, seeing it all through a new lens. She had never mentioned a partner, never worn a wedding ring that he could remember. But then, why would she? He was her client. Her personal life was none of his business. The next morning, Marcus arrived at Julia's office feeling hollowed out. She met him with sad eyes and a box of tissues already on the table between them. "I'm sorry," she said again. "This is not how I wanted things to end. You're married." "Yes, to Sarah. For 4 years now. You never mentioned her. I try to keep my personal life out of therapy sessions." "It's about you, not me." Julia folded her hands in her lap. "Marcus, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest. Did you have romantic feelings for me during our work together?" He could lie. He could protect himself, make this easier. But Julia had taught him the value of truth. "Yes, I'm in love with you, or I thought I was. Maybe it was just transference after all." Julia's eyes filled with tears. "I'm so sorry. I should have noticed, should have addressed it sooner. This is my failure, not yours." "It's not a failure. You helped me become a better person. You gave me tools to rebuild my life. That's not nothing. But I let you develop feelings that could never be reciprocated. That's a harm, Marcus. So you don't feel anything for me." Julia was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "What I feel doesn't matter. I'm married. I'm committed to Sarah. And even if I weren't, you were my client. Anything between us would be unethical." "That's not answering the question. It's the only answer I can give you." Julia wiped her eyes. "I've prepared referrals to 3 therapists who are excellent and have experience with the kind of work we've been doing. I think you should continue therapy, Marcus. You've made so much progress, but there's more healing to do." Marcus took the sheet of paper she offered but did not look at it. "What if I don't want to continue with someone else?" "Then that's your choice. But I hope you'll reconsider. You deserve support." They sat in silence for a few minutes, the weight of goodbye settling over them. "I'm going to miss you," Marcus said finally. "I'm going to miss you too. Watching your transformation has been one of the highlights of my career." Julia stood, signaling the end of the session. "Take care of yourself, Marcus. Keep practicing what you've learned. You're going to do great things." Marcus stood and extended his hand. Julia looked at it for a moment, then pulled him into a brief hug instead. He closed his eyes, breathing in her scent, memorizing the feel of her arms around him. Then it was over. He walked out of her office and did not look back. The weeks before Christmas were brutal. Marcus threw himself into work, but found no solace there. He spent time with Emma and her family, letting his nieces climb all over him while he tried to smile through the heaviness in his chest. "You seem sad," Emma said one evening while they cleaned up after dinner. "I'm fine." "You're a terrible liar. What happened?" Marcus told her everything, falling for Julia, discovering she was Sarah's wife, the abrupt end of therapy. Emma listened without interrupting, then pulled him into a tight hug. "I'm sorry," she said. "That's so complicated and painful. I should have known better. You can't help who you fall for, but Marcus, you need to move on. Julia's married." "It's not going to happen." "I know. Do you? Because knowing and accepting are different things." Marcus pulled away from her embrace. "I'm working on it," but he was not really. He drove past the Northwood Counseling Center sometimes, hoping to catch a glimpse of Julia. He looked at Sarah during staff meetings and wondered what she knew if Julia had told her everything. He felt pathetic and could not seem to stop. Christmas came and went. Marcus spent it with Emma's family, playing with his nieces and trying to feel festive. Emma gave him a journal and a note that said, "For all the feelings you need to process." He started writing in it that night, pages and pages of confusion and longing and grief. New Year's arrived with Marcus alone in his apartment, watching fireworks over the river and thinking about resolutions. He needed to move forward. He needed to accept that Julia was not and would never be his. He needed to actually do the work she had started teaching him. On January 2nd, Marcus called one of the therapists Julia had recommended. Dr. Michael Price had an opening the following week. Marcus booked it. Dr. Price was good, thorough, and insightful. But he was not Julia. Marcus went through the motions, talking about his patterns and his father and his fear of intimacy. It helped in an intellectual way, but his heart remained stuck. February brought a major contract negotiation that required Marcus's full attention. He flew to Germany for 2 weeks of meetings, grateful for the distraction. When he returned, Sarah Chen was waiting in his office. "We need to talk," she said, closing the door behind her. Marcus's stomach dropped. "About what?" "About my wife, and the fact that you're clearly miserable, and she's clearly miserable, and neither of you will talk to each other about why." "I don't know what you mean." Sarah gave him a look that said she was not buying it. "Marcus, I've known Julia for 6 years. I can tell when something's bothering her. And you've been walking around this office like a ghost since the holiday party. So let's skip the part where you pretend everything's fine and get to the truth." Marcus sat down heavily. "I developed feelings for her during therapy, inappropriate feelings. She terminated our sessions. There's nothing else to say. Except that Julia's been withdrawn for months. She barely talks about her work anymore, which is unusual. And when I mentioned your name the other day, she left the room. I'm sorry if my situation has affected your marriage." Sarah leaned against his desk. "Here's the thing you don't know. Julia and I have been having problems for over a year. We love each other, but we're not in love anymore. We're more like roommates who care about each other. We've been in couples counseling trying to figure out if we want to stay married." Marcus looked up sharply. "I didn't know." "Of course you didn't. Julia's intensely private about personal stuff." Sarah studied him. "She won't tell me what happened between you two, but I'm not stupid. Something did happen, or almost happened, or could have happened. And now you're both suffering because of ethics and boundaries and the fact that I'm technically still her wife." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that Julia and I are planning to separate. We've already told our families. We're waiting until the end of the school year to make it official because we share a house and it's complicated, but it's happening." Marcus's heart was racing. "That doesn't change anything. I was her client. Even after you separate, the ethical issues remain. For a certain amount of time, yes, but not forever." Sarah moved toward the door, then paused. "I'm not giving you permission to pursue my wife, Marcus. What I'm saying is that sometimes people meet each other at the wrong time, under the wrong circumstances. But that doesn't mean the connection isn't real or valuable, just that the timing is complicated." After she left, Marcus sat in stunned silence. Julia and Sarah were separating. Eventually, the therapeutic relationship would be far enough in the past that ethical concerns would fade. Eventually was not never, but eventually could be years. Could he wait that long? Should he? Marcus pulled out his journal and started writing, trying to process this new information. He wrote about hope and patience, and the difference between waiting for someone and waiting for the right time. He wrote about Julia's smile, her gentle challenges, the way she had seen him more clearly than anyone ever had. He wrote until his hand cramped, and even then he kept going. Spring arrived with the slow warming of the earth and the return of green to the trees. Marcus continued his therapy with Dr. Price, continued building his relationship with Emma and her family, continued improving his leadership at the company. He dated occasionally, always with the understanding that his heart was not fully available. In May, Sarah submitted her resignation. "I'm taking a position at a nonprofit," she told Marcus. "It's time for a change, for a lot of things." "How are you doing?" Marcus asked, meaning it genuinely. "Better, sad but better. Julia and I are officially separating next month. We're still friends, which feels like a gift." "I'm glad you're taking care of yourself," Sarah smiled. "You too. You've come a long way from the guy who slammed his hand on the table in board meetings." After she left, Marcus realized that Sarah's departure removed one more barrier between him and Julia. They were no longer connected through the company, but the therapeutic relationship still loomed large. He needed to respect that to give it time. In June, Marcus attended Emma's birthday party. She was turning 32, celebrating with a backyard barbecue full of friends and colleagues. Marcus was helping Tom man the grill when Emma appeared at his elbow. "There's someone here I want you to meet," she said. She led him over to a small group of women talking near the drink table. One of them turned around and Marcus's breath caught. Julia. She looked different than he remembered. Hair shorter, wearing jeans and a casual top instead of professional attire. But her eyes were the same, warm and intelligent, and when they met his, something electric passed between them. "Julia, this is my brother Marcus," Emma said. "Marcus, this is Julia. We met at a professional development workshop last year and became friends." Julia extended her hand. "Nice to meet you." Marcus shook her hand, very aware that Emma had orchestrated this meeting. Likewise. They made small talk for a few minutes before Emma was called away to deal with a kitchen emergency. Marcus and Julia stood together in awkward silence. "I didn't know you and Emma were friends," Marcus said finally. "We reconnected recently. She's wonderful." Julia glanced at him. "She may have mentioned that you were doing well." "I am. Continuing therapy, working on myself. Dr. Price has been helpful." "I'm glad." More silence. Marcus wanted to say 1,000 things but could not find the right words. "I heard about you and Sarah," he said. "I'm sorry." "Don't be. It was the right decision for both of us." Julia tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "Actually, that's not entirely true. I am sorry it didn't work out, but I'm not sorry to be moving forward." "How long has it been?" "We've been separated for 3 weeks. The divorce will be final in a few months." Marcus did the math in his head. It had been 6 months since their last therapy session. How long did ethical guidelines require? A year? 2 years? He could not remember. "Can I ask you something?" Julia said quietly. "Emma told me you've been dating but nothing serious. Is that because you're not ready or because you're waiting for something?" The directness of the question took him off guard. "Both, maybe." "Waiting for what?" Marcus met her eyes. "I think you know." Julia's breath hitched. "Marcus, we can't, not yet, maybe not for a long time. The ethics are complicated and I need to be sure we're both in a healthy place." "I understand. I'm not asking for anything right now, but eventually." "Eventually is a long time. I'm patient." "You taught me that, actually, how to sit with discomfort, how to wait for the right moment instead of forcing things." A small smile crossed Julia's face. "I'm a good teacher. The best." They talked for another hour, easy conversation about work and family and life. When the party wound down and Julia prepared to leave, Marcus walked her to her car. "Thank you for coming tonight," he said. "Thank you for being kind. This could have been incredibly awkward." "It was a little awkward," Julia laughed. "Fair, but also nice, really nice." She drove away, and Marcus stood in Emma's driveway feeling hope bloom in his chest for the first time in months. Summer passed with Marcus and Julia carefully building a friendship. They saw each other occasionally at Emma's house, at mutual gatherings. They texted sometimes, light messages about books or interesting articles. They did not talk about feelings or possibilities, but the awareness hummed beneath every interaction. In August, Emma cornered Marcus in her kitchen during a family dinner. "You're being ridiculous," she said bluntly. "You and Julia are clearly crazy about each other. Just ask her out already." "It's not that simple. There are ethical considerations." "It's been almost a year since you were her client. At some point you have to move forward. I want to do this right. I want to respect her professional integrity." Emma softened. "That's very noble, but don't wait so long that you miss your chance." The conversation stayed with Marcus. That night he texted Julia, "Can we talk sometime, just the two of us?" Her response came quickly. "Yes. When?" They met for coffee on a Saturday morning at a quiet cafe near the river. Julia arrived first, and Marcus spotted her through the window, reading a book while she waited. His heart did that familiar flip it always did when he saw her. He ordered coffee and joined her at the table. "Thank you for meeting me," Marcus said. "Of course. What's on your mind?" He took a breath, gathering courage. "I know the timing has been complicated. I know there are ethical issues and you're going through a divorce and everything is messy. But I need you to know that my feelings haven't changed. If anything, they've gotten stronger. And I'm not going to push or pressure you, but I also can't keep pretending I just want to be friends." Julia set down her coffee cup, her expression serious. "I need to be honest with you too. When I was your therapist, I worked very hard to maintain boundaries. But there were moments when I felt something more and it scared me. Because feeling that way about a client is wrong, it's a violation of trust. So I buried it and told myself it was just my ego enjoying your progress. And now I'm not your therapist. Now we're two people who met under complicated circumstances and can't seem to stop orbiting each other." She reached across the table and took his hand. "I've consulted with my own therapist and with colleagues about the ethics. The consensus is that after a year, with proper boundaries and consideration, a relationship is not prohibited. It's not ideal, but it's not forbidden." Marcus's pulse was racing. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that I have feelings for you too, real, genuine, complicated feelings. And if you're willing to take this slow, to let us both be sure we're doing this for the right reasons, I'd like to explore what this could be." "How slow?" Julia laughed. "Slow like actual dates. Like getting to know each other outside of a therapeutic context. Like making sure this isn't just transference or gratitude or the appeal of the forbidden. I can do slow." They started dating in September, almost a year to the day after Marcus had first walked into the Northwood Counseling Center. Their first official date was dinner at a small Italian restaurant, and Marcus had never been more nervous in his life. But within 10 minutes, the conversation flowed easily, picking up threads from all their previous interactions. Julia told him about her childhood in Chicago, her decision to become a therapist after watching her own family struggle with addiction and mental health issues. She told him about her marriage to Sarah, how they had grown apart gradually, how the divorce was sad but necessary. She told him about her dreams of opening her own practice focused on relationship therapy. Marcus told her about the company, but also about his nieces and his evolving relationship with Emma. He told her about the journal he still kept, about the ways he was trying to be more emotionally available. He told her about the loneliness that had defined so much of his life and how she had shown him a different way of being. "You did that yourself," Julia corrected gently. "I just held up a mirror." They took it slow, as promised. Dates once a week, then twice. Long conversations that stretched into the night. Marcus met Julia's friends and family. Julia came to a company event as his date, and the employees who had taken the training program grinned knowingly. By November, they were officially together, navigating the newness of a relationship with all the awareness and communication tools Julia had taught Marcus. They talked about everything: fears, hopes, boundaries, needs. It was not always easy, but it was real. On a cold evening in December, Marcus and Julia sat in his apartment overlooking the river, lights from the city reflecting off the water. They had just finished dinner and Julia was curled against his side on the couch. "I've been thinking," Marcus said. "Dangerous," Julia teased. "I'm serious. I've been thinking about the company, about what I want my legacy to be. And I'm considering starting a foundation focused on workplace mental health and conflict resolution training. Make the program we did available to companies that can't afford it." Julia sat up, her eyes bright. "Marcus, that's amazing. You could impact thousands of people. I want to do it with you. As partners, you'd run the therapeutic side, develop the curriculum. I'd handle the business and fundraising. Are you offering me a job? I'm offering you a partnership. In this and in everything else if you want it." Julia kissed him, slow and deep. When she pulled back, her smile was radiant. "I want it, all of it." They spent the winter planning, both the foundation and their future. Marcus's divorce from his old self was finally complete. He had learned to feel, to communicate, to show up authentically in relationships. Julia had helped him fix his heart, and in doing so, had given him hers. In March, exactly 1 year after Marcus had first slammed his hand on that conference table, the Whitmore Foundation for Workplace Wellness launched. The first training program filled within days. Marcus and Julia taught it together, a perfect balance of business acumen and therapeutic insight. Emma came to the first session with Tom, wanting to improve their own communication. Watching his sister work through exercises with her husband, Marcus felt a profound sense of gratitude for the journey that had brought him here. After the session ended and participants were filing out, Julia found Marcus alone in the conference room. "You were amazing tonight," she said. "We were amazing. This is our work now together." Julia wrapped her arms around his waist. "I have something to ask you. Anything. Move in with me. My house is bigger than your apartment and I'm tired of splitting time between places. I want to wake up next to you every morning." Marcus pulled her close, breathing in the scent of her hair. "Yes, absolutely yes." They moved in together in April, blending their lives in ways that felt both natural and revolutionary. Marcus learned Julia's morning routines, her preference for tea over coffee, the way she hummed while cooking. Julia learned that Marcus was surprisingly domestic, that he loved to cook elaborate meals on weekends, that he talked to his nieces on video chat every Sunday evening. In May, on a weekend trip to northern Michigan, Marcus and Julia hiked to an overlook above Lake Superior. The water stretched endlessly blue beneath a perfect sky. "I love you," Marcus said, the words coming easily now. "I love who I am when I'm with you. I love the life we're building. I love that you saw the best in me even when I couldn't see it myself." Julia's eyes filled with tears. "I love you too, so much." Marcus reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small box. Julia's hand flew to her mouth. "I know we said we'd take things slow," Marcus said, "but I also know that I want to spend the rest of my life with you. Will you marry me?" "Yes," Julia said, laughing and crying at once. "Yes, absolutely yes." The ring slid onto her finger perfectly, a simple band with a single diamond that caught the sunlight. They kissed with the lake spread out before them, the beginning of forever. They married in September, a small ceremony in Emma's backyard with close friends and family. Lily and Sophie were flower girls, taking their duties very seriously. Sarah attended with her new girlfriend, hugging both Marcus and Julia with genuine happiness. Emma gave a toast that made everyone laugh and cry, talking about her brother's transformation from an emotionally unavailable workaholic to a man who loved deeply and showed it freely. "Julia, you didn't just teach Marcus how to fix his heart," Emma said, raising her glass. "You taught him how to open it, and we're all better for it." As the sun set and guests danced under string lights, Marcus pulled Julia close. "Happy?" he asked. "Unbelievably," she said. "You? More than I ever thought possible." They danced slowly, and Marcus thought about the journey that had brought him here. The pain of losing his father, the loneliness of success, the desperate hope that had led him to that first training session. He had gone looking for a way to fix his company, and instead had found a way to fix himself. Or maybe not fix, he thought. Julia had taught him that he was never really broken, just scared and defended and in need of connection. She had shown him how to be vulnerable, how to communicate, how to love without holding back. The foundation thrived, helping hundreds of companies transform their workplace cultures. Marcus and Julia became known as pioneers in the field, speaking at conferences and writing articles about the intersection of business and emotional intelligence. 2 years after their wedding, Julia announced she was pregnant. Marcus cried when she told him, overcome with joy and terror in equal measure. "I don't know how to be a father," he admitted. "Good thing you've been practicing with your nieces," Julia said, "and we'll figure it out together. That's what we do." Their daughter, Charlotte, was born on a snowy January morning. Marcus held her tiny body against his chest and made promises he intended to keep. To be present, to be emotionally available, to show her through example that strength and vulnerability could coexist. Emma visited the hospital with Lily and Sophie, now 11 and 8. They cooed over their new cousin, already planning all the things they would teach her. "You're going to be a great dad," Emma told Marcus. "I hope so." "I know so. Look how far you've come." Marcus looked at his sister, his wife, his daughter, the family he had rebuilt, and the new family he was creating. Julia caught his eye from the hospital bed and smiled, that same warm smile that had first made him feel seen. He smiled back, his heart full to bursting. He had gone to family mediation training for work and found so much more. Healing, love, purpose, and the courage to become the man he was always meant to be. Julia had shown him how to fix his heart by teaching him it was okay to break it open, to let people in, to feel everything fully. And in doing so, she had given him the greatest gift of all, a life worth living, surrounded by people worth loving, with a heart finally whole enough to hold it all.